What's up, Keller Williams Realty Partners? I wanted to start the buy side of the transaction. This is going to be labeled the buyer's side point of view. Some of you have already watched my series on the seller side point of view, but many of you may be dealing with a buyer first, so you'll probably watch this first. Either way, I send an email out to all my buyers and all my sellers once they are starting the process, and once they're under contract, laying out all these things that I'm going to talk to you about. This will probably end up being a 4 or 5 video series about what to expect from the buy side. And again, we're going to be talking about this from the buyer's perspective, like you're representing a buyer. And again, in the other series, I did it from the seller's perspective if you were the listing agent. But again, I send this video out because not to freak the buyer out, but I also want them to, at the same time, to know some of the things that could go wrong during the transaction process. And in doing so, it walks them through what to expect in about 9 out of 10 cases. This covers about 90% of the things you'll ever see from the buyer's perspective. And I'm going to use that as a tool to teach you and walk you through the buyer side of the process as well. So the first thing I like to do is send them a little bit of information, or at least make them aware that a home warranty is a thing and it's available. And what I write is, should you choose in favor of one, I have attached an HWA home warranty agreement for your review. Please look it over to make sure you understand the items that are and are not covered. As a buyer's agent, you don't want to be responsible for something the home warranty company does or doesn't do, or something that they do cover and don't cover. So, even though HWA has a great reputation, they are the preferred vendor in our office, they do a great job, you don't want to be responsible for something that they are ultimately going to be responsible for. So my suggestion to you is to always send them the brochure and let them read through it. Let them talk to our account rep about any questions they may have about what is or isn't covered, especially for first-time home buyers. They may be coming to the closing table with almost all the money they had in their account to buy the house. So they don't typically have a lot of money to cover when the hot water heater breaks, or if the HVAC breaks, or the refrigerator, and so on. This is a good product for them to consider if they are in that situation, or something. I know some people who've lived in their homes for years and who've got plenty of money in the bank, and they want to have a home warranty. So it's important for them to know what is and what isn't covered. For example, a lot of times things like roofs aren't covered, the foundation's not covered, the exterior siding is not covered, things like this. So you want to make sure they're at least educated on that. And again, you don't want to be necessarily responsible for that information. HWA has a pretty good reputation and pays 97% of all claims. From time to time, there are items that are not covered. What you might have sometimes, particularly if you've written one of these into the contract, is that they make a claim, and it doesn't happen often, but something is not covered. So you want to make sure they do know that, like most insurance, not 100% of everything is going to be covered. This is typical with all home warranties, but I want to make sure you know exactly what the agreement entails so you can research and make an alternative choice if you'd like. Feel free to give me a call should you have any questions. And again, this is me talking to the buyer. Their service call, their service call is $100, which is very typical. At the time of this video, that may not be $100 anymore. It may be $150. I don't know. Again, you'll have to go through all that with whatever warranty company you choose to go with. But it is important to make sure that your buyer is aware that this is a product that's available to them and could, in fact, save them a lot of money. And the second thing I'm going to go over, I'm going to skip around this just a little bit. I do want to talk about earnest money. Usually within 5 days, sometimes within 1 or 3 days, it depends on what you negotiated with a particular seller, that earnest money is going to need to be turned in fairly quickly. And to the extent that you're able, you need to try to make sure that our office, Keller Williams Realty Partners, holds that. They can do that via a check, or they can do that via, I believe it's an ACH transfer. It may be a wire also, but anyway, you can go over that. But if that money is late, you put your buyer at a potential default. So you always want to make sure you collect that as soon as you can. In Georgia, typically, and this is, I say typical, not every time, earnest money is usually around 1%. It can be anything. It could be $0. It could be $20,000 on a $300,000 home. It just depends. Okay. So what I write the buyer here is, we will need to collect earnest money from you as soon as possible. In most cases, the contract will dictate that my brokers will hold the earnest money. The best way to send earnest money is through an ACH to my office. I will get you instructions. If we get the earnest money in late, we will have to amend the contract and risk default. Again, you want to avoid this to the extent that you can. Be in constant communication with your buyer. When you go over the purchase and sale agreement with your buyer, when you prepare to make the offer, regardless if you're making one offer or multiple offers or whatever, this is one of those things you're going to need to go over with him or her. Let them know that you're going to need to be collecting earnest money soon and that you risk default if you don't get it in on time. The other thing I wanted to mention here, and this is something I've spoken about in the seller series, but the seller's right to extend closing. Now, rarely will the seller do this. It's usually the buyer side that executes this amendment. But the seller's right to extend closing, the seller has the legal right, and this is in the contract, extend the closing for up to 8 days for valid title objections or problems. Usually it's a problem with title. And so I just want to let you know that the seller does have that right in addition to the buyer. So they may be all set to move in on August 1st, but and I've seen these unilateral extensions be issued or notice given the day of closing, and it's very disappointing, but they need to know that this is a real possibility. And again, I'm also careful to note that this is incredibly rare, especially on the seller side. So in the next video, we will be talking about, bear with me a second here, we will go into the loan side of the transaction and what the buyer and you as the buyer's agent needs to know. Thanks for watching.